Welcome, everybody, to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. I'm Rick, and we are going to be talking about leadership today with Damian Marquez. Damien helps high achieving professionals, leaders, and teams move from surviving to thriving by unlocking their purpose, building unshakable confidence, and creating lasting impact. His journey started with outward success and inward frustration, but he wasn't living with clarity or intention. Damien was stuck. Once he broke free, Damien knew he had to help others do the same. As a leadership coach, mentor, and team building facilitator, he works with individuals and organizations to identify their strengths, develop healthy habits, and lead with purpose. Damien's approach is grounded in biblical truth and real world strategies to help people gain momentum in every area of life. Whether you want to grow personally, strengthen your team, or build a life of influence, Damien provides tools that lead to real transformation. Damien's mission is to equip people to live with confidence, lead with conviction, and leave a legacy that matters. Damien, welcome to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Pleasure to have you on here. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, you're welcome. And folks, what I neglected to say when I first started this off, you don't have to be a firefighter to listen to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick, igniting leadership excellence, because we are talking about leadership. And I do know that we have people who are not firefighters that listen to this. And for those of you who are firefighters, you may say, "Hey, Rick, well, why do you bring people on to your podcast that are not firefighters?" And the reason being is I can bring people on like Damien who have different backgrounds, different leadership experiences, and that definitely cross over. That way, we don't have a family tree that runs up and down like that telephone pole behind me, in the picture here.
So good. So good.
Yeah. So, Damien, fill in the blanks that wasn't in your introduction there.
Yeah. Again, former first responder. I was on the law enforcement side. Did that in California until, that time was chapter was over and it was time to start building a real legacy, right? I think as a first responder and seen many of my firefighter buddies on the same calls or calls for service or just how we partnered together. We saw leadership in different avenues and just in different people. So for me, I wanted to be grounded in some of the things I learned as a first responder and as a business coach and now mentor and speaker. I wanted to implement those tools and those traits, like you said, those characteristics that we learn, some on the job and just through life experiences. So for me, that's my journey where I'm at now. And I just want to add value to people and pour into these people that have the leadership skills and qualities through their characteristics. We just got to find out where it is for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Damien, how long were you in law enforcement?
I spent 20 years total as a first responder for two different agencies. Yeah.
Okay, well, congratulations. And folks, Damien and I met each other in June of 2025. Damien's also a member of the Maxwell Certified Leadership Team,
Yes.
and we both attended what the Maxwell team calls city tours. It was down in the Denver
Yes.
metro area, and we sat at the same table and found out it's like, hey, Damien was law enforcement, I'm fire, and so there are similarities there, and we connected through that way. And what you had mentioned there, Damien, about being out on the street, working together, fire and police, and depending on the type of incident, you know, sometimes it's like, okay, law enforcement, shows up, and it's like, okay, hey, how you guys doing? You're there for some crowd control or traffic control, but then there's other times it's like, yeah, we need you guys, or we're there to support you. And it's great when the relationship can function well together, isn't it?
Yes, sir, absolutely. And I always just enjoyed that fire engine, that truck rolling down the street until I realized you all have to wash it. And when it gets dirty, I'm like, no, thank you. I'll stay on the law enforcement side.
Yeah, depending on the size, it could take a little bit to wash those things, And then here in Colorado, when it does snow, which we haven't had a lot of that this year, those things can get pretty mucked up and dirty. Yeah. Yeah. So tell us, Damien, your involvement in law enforcement, what impact did that have on your approach to leadership and leadership coaching?
Oh, great question. I think throughout my year in my career and just working under different supervision was the character of the individual.
Mm,
Whether it was a male supervisor or a female supervisor, it was that character that really drew you to that person. And, being a young officer, and then as you grow up and you start to go into your new journey or a new season, now, okay, it's time for me to lead now, not only just as a first responder, but also lead now my family.
hmm
It was those characteristics that I saw in those leaders that I'm like, I need to figure out how to get that kind of character so that way I can lead well and add value as well.
hmm Yeah, that's a big deal character a few years back. And I should have probably had cut this thing out and saved it, but I was reading an article in a trade journal and the author wrote, I'm paraphrasing, he said, well, there's a lot said about character and leadership, and I don't believe that's an issue. And I thought, what are you, nuts? Of course, character is an issue in leadership. Now, you shared a little bit with me last year about your background, where you grew up at and then where you were working at on the street. And so, what you just mentioned there about character, Damien, how did that play out when you were working with people that you were responding to, and sometimes in some not so friendly situations?
Yeah, right. Sometimes as law enforcement, first responder, either side of the coin is we're meeting people at their worst time in their life, or, a very traumatic incident just occurred. And I started to see the difference of having that great character, which would create a better attitude going
Mm,
into the scene or having to deal with a situation. Then those are when me personally didn't have the right character Istics didn't give me the right kind of attitude, and it struggled to try to connect with those people, right? Or try to provide the service that was needed.
mm.
So again, I'm so big, Rick, on character because I think that's kind of the core foundation to people who lead because the character just branches off into everything else, all those other great values you need as a great leader.
Attitude, Damon. I thought of an incident that I responded to when I was a battalion chief. It was a medical incident that I attached myself to because it was going south and it was in a more remote part of our jurisdiction. And where they had called for the crew, the engine crew had called for law enforcement assistance. And it was like, dispatch said it was going to be quite a while before they got there. So what had happened is I found out later on is the crew went to a place up in a mountainous area. And, there's something about the mountains that attracts a certain type of people that don't want to be involved with society, shall we say?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And this was one of those houses. And the crew told me afterwards that everything was going fine until the ambulance showed up. And one of the medics came in and was exerting their authority with an attitude. And from that point there, it went south. And it almost got physical up there on the side of the mountain. And it was a long time before, the sheriff was able to get up there. But when you mention attitude, it's like, yeah, our attitude, how we carry ourselves in those situations can make it good or bad because you guys on the law enforcement side were trained to de-escalate, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. To the best of our ability.
So, okay, so now you're not involved in, civilian or excuse me, municipal law enforcement. What are you exactly doing now, Damien?
So now again, just as a coach, a speaker, mentor, team builder, I go and work with some pretty big ministries here in Colorado. But that's what I did after law enforcement. It's like, okay, how am I going to be able to lead myself now? And I just went to my family for the
Mhm,
times where I was absent because of the job or just because I wasn't being a good leader because I wasn't, exuding those great characteristics. I started to work on my family and just to
mhm.
be the best husband I could be now, be the best father that I could be, and now grandfather. So, when I look at my family now, that's my legacy. So it's like, okay, what do I need to do to be a good leader in my home? So that's kind of where it started, Rick. I just started,
Okay.
again, we talk about attitude, right? Yeah, and I want to just share this real quick. One of the great things I heard about attitude when I was listening to the speaker, he said, our attitude determines our altitude, meaning
Mm.
how high we're going to set the bar, right? So we can have that great attitude that rises us up to the next level, gets us in the room, or we can have that poor attitude that I like to say keeps you in the dunk. And I don't know, I don't like to be in the dunk for a very long time. So just another great thing about attitude. So as I started to transition now to lead my family, now I have a small business here in Colorado Springs called Three Strong, and that's what we're about. We're just about developing leaders because everyone's meant to lead. Again, we talk about John Maxwell, right? He says
Hmm.
that everyone's meant to lead somebody, first yourself, and then the group of people that come into your life or the people you're called to lead. So that's where I'm at now. As a small business owner here in Colorado Springs, I'm just hungry to lead other leaders and add value to them.
Okay. Yeah, great. I want to come back to the small business owner here in a little bit because there's a lot of people who work law enforcement and fire, and they start looking at what's going to happen next.
Yes.
Should I start my own business? I want to come back to that here, but talk about leadership first. So, Damien, what are some common challenges that high achieving professionals in leadership roles face, especially high stress environments like law enforcement and fire?
Oh, great question. I think for me, at the end of the day, when I would look back on some of those incidents, is did I have the patience that I needed for that
Mm,
particular incident, especially the real critical incidents, right? As things evolve and things are happening at just a quick pace and a quick speed, it's like, do I have the patience to see things through? Do I have the patience to respond correctly? Do I have the patience to react correctly? Because especially life and death types of things, right? And for me, that word patience used to come into my thought process after the incident was over, and I would have to do that self inventory is because patience, I think, for me, in the law enforcement community, really holds a lot of value on how your success is out there, but also how you keep yourself alive and those around you alive.
Patience, that's an interesting avenue right there because I don't think a lot of people who are not involved in any type of emergency services look at people who are doing fire, police, EMS as being patient people. Because of course, they watch the nonsense that's on television to begin with, the Hollywood stuff. And
Yes.
the rushing around, the yelling, screaming, at each other, and it's really it's not like that. And so the image that's portrayed of law enforcement and fire and EMS is absolutely incorrect, but patience and even in our world of emergency response, I have to ask myself how many people who are employed, whether they're full-time or they're volunteers, actually stop and think about that word patience, because that really translates to slowing down, doesn't it?
Absolutely right. Again, we have to have a game plan going into a scene, right? But I think
Mhm.
when we're able to have that patient pause, to think clearly, to respond clearly, to say things clearly, then we could give our orders out or we could give our commands out, and then we can effectively execute with excellence. But if we're just kind of running in there and not taking that quick second, that patient pause, where I used to call it,
Mhm.
then it's going to be more difficult, right, to be effective and to be able to give an excellent service.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for our listeners who are on the job about what they can do to improve their patience or that patient pause, like you just mentioned?
Oh, great question. For me, it was just yeah, there was some breathing that I would just do, just kind of take that time to take a breath, breathe that air in and let it
Mm.
out. That way I could get my mindset, you know, to slow down. I could
Yeah.
get my thought process to start to get in alignment to whatever type of incident we were responding into, or whatever kind of critical incident what we needed to handle and take command and control over. Just that little breath of fresh air. Like I love that phrase, breath of fresh air, because for me it really was a breath of fresh air of patience. That way I could respond and act accordingly. I could do the command, control, and contain,
Mm.
because I had that pause and I had that time to just kind of get that good fresh breath of air in me.
Yeah, yeah, cool. That's a great tip. Hey, in your bio, you mentioned moving from surviving to thriving. Can you explain what that transition looks like for a leader and why it's important?
Yeah, I think for all of us, right, we have a purpose, right? Again, some of us just have that purpose to get called into the military, have that purpose to serve as a
Mm,
first responder or a teacher. There's so many other great things, right? And for me, it wasn't until I was much older that I started to realize what my really true purpose was. And for me, that was to be a good leader in the home. That way I could be a good leader in the community.
mhm.
So that's kind of how I talk about I was just surviving the moments because I wasn't really leading in my real purpose. And that was for me to lead my home great so I could lead my community great.
Yeah. That's great because that is a problem with so many men that
Yes.
I see is they're not leading their families. And something that my wife and I often talk about, and even we've heard our pastor, mention this more than one time, is the number of men in society, will drill it down to America, that really don't want to grow up. It's like they still act like they're in high school. Can you address
Yes, come
that, talk
on.
to that?
Yes, yes. And again, to go back to our great mentor, John Maxwell, right? He says the very first person you master is yourself, right?
Mhm.
Again, for those people that don't have a family yet, it's like start leading yourself well. That way you can lead the community well.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. Actually, it's a very disturbing thing to see this in so many men. But then the opposite of that too, and we certainly have seen this. It's not just something specific to emergency services, but it's that
Yes.
career climb, the career climb. I want to move up the ladder. On the fire side, I want to be a company officer or a chief officer. On law enforcement side, a sergeant, a lieutenant. So forth and so on. And what happens to our families when that's our focus?
Right, yeah, that they make the ultimate sacrifice, right?
Mhm.
With us being checked out, I would say, right? Like, yeah, we're there, but we're not there, right? We're in the home, but we're not really in the home. And, for me, I fell to that as well. I wanted to advance in my career, so I spent more time out in the street and less time at home. And, you don't get that time back.
No,
You
you
really
don't.
don't. And it took my wife to kind of open up my eyes and take the veil off to say, we need you here as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, we all kind of fall into that, right? Again, if we don't have that proper balance, we don't do the patient pause, right? We could really get things out of order.
Yeah, and folks, those of you who are fire EMS, law enforcement, I hope you just listened to what Damien shared, his wife said, that they needed Damien. Our families need
Yes.
us. Emergency services is a great career. It's a demanding career and it's an unforgiving career. But Damien said it. We don't get those moments back. Our oldest daughter just yesterday, she celebrated her 37th birthday.
Come
And
on, yes.
it's like wow. And Damien, just as a side note, that night that she was born and I came home, our mailbox had been rifled through. So I called, the PD, and the officer that showed up that day, the patrolman that showed up later on became the police chief here in our
Come on,
in our
yes.
city, you know. And so, but that's how fast time goes, and we can't get that time back, folks. So this is a great career. We have a great career in emergency services, but it's going to come to an end at some point. And don't sacrifice your families, for the job. Please don't sacrifice your families. So, Damien, how can leaders identify their strengths and use them to create a more impactful team environment?
Oh, that's so good. For me, I learned to just keep it super simple, right? It's like, what do I love to do and what am I good at? That's my lane, right? And just continue to work on that lane. And again, I like again what John talks about. He goes, when you focus on your personal growth, you
Hmm.
just growing as a person, then all your goals you'll meet and more than that. So I know we all have those goals, right? As first responders or in life or just business owners or whatever we do in life, but work on yourself, work on on you as a person, and you'll meet every goal that you write on the board or every goal that you have on your vision board or every goal you have written down as a family. So for me now, it's how do I continually personally work on Damien? And that's again where my strengths are, what do I love to do, and it's just I love adding value to people and helping them become the best version of themselves.
Yeah, working on your strengths. I'm just about through with John Maxwell's newest book, The Return on Failure. And
Yes.
he's got a chapter where he talks about that is, not working on your weaknesses, because so many people spend time working on the weaknesses, but working on those strengths in those areas that we are good at. But that helps eliminate some frustrations in our lives, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just, and I was listening to a speaker one time, and I think it may be John or someone else, but they would always use that old term that, he's the jack of all trades, but master of none. And then the speaker would just say, well, just master the one thing.
Eh,
Just master one thing in your life and don't worry about the other stuff because those aren't your strengths. So if you could
Yeah.
just master one thing, and I go back to, for me, Damien, it's master your personal growth. And then
hmm
that way you could go ahead and execute effectively.
Let's stop on that for a second. Master your personal growth. Talk about the importance of personal growth, Damien, because one of the other things that drives me crazy about men, and I've seen this with not a lot of firefighters, but some, it's like, well, I don't read. I don't like to
Yes.
read. And if you don't read, how can you grow? Could you talk about that?
Yes, thank you. And again, my personal story, my personal journey is I wasn't a reader either. I mean, that was not something I loved to do. I just wanted to play ball and be on the field. And
Mhm.
then when ESPN didn't call, I got into law enforcement as a first responder, and that was great to do that as well. But for me, again, it was where do I fall short at is because I didn't really like reading. So for me, it was a conscious thing that I had to do to read so that way I could start to learn some things that I didn't know how to learn and unlearn some things that I thought I learned the right way, but I was learning them incorrectly. So reading is a big thing for me, Rick, and I'm glad that you asked that question. And I just want to encourage those that are listening that pick up a book and just start reading. That's how you grow yourself. And that's how you learn more about yourself. And that way you're not wasting time on your weaknesses. You're focusing on all your strengths.
Yeah, I just thought about a very famous general, George Patton, during World
Yeah.
War II. And even on the eve of battle, he was reading the German General Rommel's book on
Yes.
infantry attacks. So in the eve of battle, he's reading the opposition and what he had to write. And so you get somebody like Patton, uh, he immersed himself into personal development and personal growth.
Absolutely. And I would say to the listener is pick up leadership books, of
Mm,
different authors and just start reading about leaders and how they lead, whether it's in business, family, entrepreneurship. Just start picking up books about people who lead well or those that have a great story or, autobiographies. I love reading about people's journeys and how they navigated life through their different seasons because again, right, our careers end but we continue to live. And what we
yeah.
do after that career, right, is how we kind of navigate life, the second chapter, right? So now that I'm in my 50s, I'm in my second chapter. So now how can I grow myself as a person now and as a leader, no longer as a first responder?
Yeah. I like that. And folks, those of you who are wearing a uniform, uh, be careful about how you identify. We can get so attached to the uniform, the patch, the badge, that that's our identity, that when we leave that, or if it comes to a sudden end unexpectedly through, an injury, something of that nature, and you don't have that identity anymore, where does that put you? And I'm specifically thinking of an individual that I know of that 2 years after his career ended in the police department, he died. And for all intents and purposes, he was the police department and the police department was him. And, we should not be like that. Damien hit on the fact that he's got a different chapter in his life right now. And Damien, I know a fellow that retired as a colonel from the Marine Corps. He had fought in Vietnam, and I had a conversation. I haven't seen him now for a few years, but he had divided his life up into 20 years. My first 20 years, I did this. My next 20 years, I did this. This is where I'm at in this, my next 20 years. And it was an interesting approach to how he looked at that and how he dealt with separating from a career in the Marine Corps and stepping away from that into the civilian life.
That's so good. That's good. And I started that journey as well too. About a decade ago, I'm like, I started looking back at my life in decades, and okay, now I'm in the 50 decades. How am I going to live my life now? Because I can't live it like I was in the 20 decades or the 30 decades. It's a different time and season for me. I'm a different person now, and we should always grow to be a different person, right?
Yeah.
That's how we add value to our family and add value to others, is we grow into a different person, not losing our identity, but we just grow in a different person, meaning we're always constantly growing and learning more about ourselves.
Right. And our knees hurt now, don't they?
Yes.
So, Damien, you mentioned the importance of building unshakable confidence. What are some practical strategies leaders can adopt to boost their self-confidence?
Ooh, great question. For me, it's first of all, know who you are. Right? Again, we all fall in that comparison gap. We
Mhm.
compare ourselves to so and so. We compare ourselves to how this person is doing, even within our own family, right? We compare ourselves like that. But just know who you are, Rick.
Mhm.
Right? You have your strengths, you have your gifts and your talents. So always continue to work on that as an individual, and then the other stuff will kind of take care of itself. So for me, it was I had to really kind of get narrowed in and just focus on Damien and what's the best part of me, and now I can continue to grow that and not compare myself to what so and so is saying or what so and so is doing, because they have their own journey and their season as well.
Yeah, but we like to compare ourselves to other people, don't we?
Yeah, come on, we're men, right?
We've
Yeah,
talked
yeah.
about purpose a little bit here. And so now you're doing coaching. How can leaders discover their purpose? What tips do you have for people who say, "Hey, they're listening to this and they're saying, 'Hey, Rick, hey, Damien, that all sounds good, but I don't know what my purpose is.'" How can you help them out, Damien?
Yeah, great. Another great question. For me, it's what do you struggle with personally? What are some obstacles and things that you had to overcome and some hurdles that you had to, jump over or climb over? That's where you're called to lead.
Hmm.
So for me, I go back to some of the downfalls that I had or some of the things that I had to learn, as a first responder and then learn after a first responder. For me, it was learning how to lead well. And for me, it was knowing myself so I could grow myself. And that started with reading books on leadership, reading books on how to carry yourself, reading books on great characteristics with great values, those types of people. So that's your lane for you that are listening, is what do I struggle with, or what some obstacles that I had to overcome? It's like, you're more equipped to teach your former self, is what a great man told me one time. So what was your former self? Now that's the person you go lead and go coach. And there's plenty of them out there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good because that really narrows it down. So, what's your favorite Maxwell book?
Ooh, there's so many good ones. You know what? I always go to developing the leader within you,
Hmm.
the
That's a good one.
2.0 version, right? Because again, it's how do I lead Damien so that way I can lead others. If I can't lead myself, then I have no business trying to lead others. And again, it starts with the family, right? So how do I keep developing the leader that's in me? Because we're all meant to lead, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's ourselves or whether it's a big corporation, you're meant to lead somebody, which is first you, and then you could go and lead others. So I love that book. I always kind of reopen it and just make sure I do a check inventory. And also, the 15 irrefutable laws of growth. I always go
Hmm.
back to that book too. Again, is it right? We talked about comparison gap. Am I trying to compare myself with others, or am I trying to be too perfect, or is my expectations not where they're supposed to be? So those are the two books that I always go to. They're always on my desk, and I love those two books that John wrote.
Yeah, that's great. Are you familiar with one of his books that's not as well known called The 21 Most Powerful Minutes in a Leader's Day?
No, I have not picked that one up yet, but it's on the
It's
list.
yeah, it's based off the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And it's all biblical based. and each chapter centers around a different character in the Bible, and it's built out on a 5 day schedule. So the intent is like on Monday today, you pick up chapter one, which chapter one in that book is the law of the lid. And so there's a
Okay.
number of scripture reading that goes along with it out of First and Second Samuel because it's talking about David and Jonathan. And
Okay.
so then day two, three, and four is related to that. And then day five is an encapsulation. So it's really built for the people who are working what we would look at as a typical schedule. I didn't work a typical schedule, so I didn't
No.
didn't read it like that. Neither did you.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's great. It's a great book. It's a great book. It's really biblically based, and that's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
From John. So,
And
in your
one more, Rick, if I
yes,
had to
sir.
say for book number three, for someone out there that kind of, if you're feeling like you're lost or you just kind of don't know how things are going, you feel like you're not winning today, was Make Today Count, right? Or Today
Mm,
Matters. And he talks
yeah.
about again how the secret to our success is determined by your daily habits, right? Are the things that you do daily, are they leading you to success? And if they're not, then that's when you have to kind of do that self-inventory. So that would be book number three for me to recommend to somebody is,
Mm.
make today count, make every day count, make every moment count.
Yeah, and for those of you who are regular listeners, you've heard me say this before. You can listen to these books on audio as well.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Yeah. Any way you
you-
can get it in. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And folks, if you're not familiar with John Maxwell, he's a great author. And I love the writing style that he has because it is an easy style to read. And there are some books that I read and it's like, wow, it's heavy. They're heavy books and I slug my way through them. But then I'll pick up one of John's books and it goes a lot smoother. So for those of you, who may be hesitant and fearful of, picking up something that's heavy duty, John's books are not like that, and it's a great place to start. And so, Damien, in your experience, what are some key habits that successful leaders consistently practice to maintain their effectiveness over time?
Oh, love that question. For me, it's, are your disciplines helping you grow, or are they helping you go backwards?
Oh,
Right? Again, the disciplined lifestyle, first responders, military, a lot of those
mhm,
professions, right? You have to have that certain type of discipline. But also in just life in general, you have to have a discipline that's helping you lead life well and not leading life backwards. So
mhm.
that's the big component for me is, where's my discipline level at? Where's my discipline meter at? Do I have the discipline needed to grow myself so I could grow others? Or am I having the discipline that's making me feel like I'm always going backwards? So my big encouragement for people listening is, where's your discipline meter at? Are you compromising your discipline? Is there some things you may need to get rid of and not and be a part of your life, and maybe put some things down? That takes discipline.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, can you share how biblical truths influence your coaching and how they can be applied in a modern leadership context?
Yes, biblical principles, right? It's the foundation of kind of how we're to live life. And again, we get that from our great mentor, John, where he
Mhm,
talks about everything he learned about leadership was in biblical principles,
mhm.
right? And we talk about basic instructions before leaving Earth, Bible. So this is an instruction manual for you to live life well before you leave here to go on to your next
Mm.
assignment. So that's why I call them the biblical principle foundation, because of just of that concept. They're basic instructions before leaving Earth. So what are these instructions that I need to encompass and inherit into my life so that way I can lead well?
Yeah, I love that. I don't think I've ever heard that. Biblical instructions before leaving Earth.
Yeah, I was listening to a great man and I can't remember his name, and he said it. I'm like, and it just stuck with me. Yeah, it just stuck with me.
Yeah, that's great. And then there's so many, great lessons, of course, deep, salvation, number one, through Christ. My wife and I, we have the singles group in our church, and I've been going through a series in the book of Nehemiah. And it's not fast, but I'm digging in, talking about, the leadership aspects of Nehemiah and how the people in our group can apply them to their everyday life because there's just so many fantastic lessons that are in the Bible. So what advice would you give to someone who feels stuck in their leadership journey and is unsure of how to move forward?
Oh, great question. Seek help.
No.
We all need that
No.
small inner circle, right? I don't have all the answers. Rick, you don't have all the answers,
No.
right? But when we ask the question, we'd be amazed how many times I asked a question just in a group setting or I was working with somebody and may have not known them that well, but hey, can I just ask you a question? And the door that opened up to that just by one question. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to go in and just ask somebody for their time, and you'll find the right person. But always make sure that you have the right questions you want to ask. Don't waste their time. Come to them with a great question that maybe you're pondering or you just can't figure something out. Again, I'm not a tech person, so I go and seek people that have that gift and like to do tech stuff. When I'm kind of, as a small business owner, having a little issue with some tech stuff, I go and just ask them that question. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to ask the question.
Yeah, that's great. When you're mentioning that, I thought of a man, Dick Miner. Dick Miner was one of our fire chiefs, and he passed away a couple of years ago, but he was that way. He would just take his time to speak with you. When I worked at our fire station one, which also was the headquarters station, there was opportunities, to speak with him quite a bit. And he would just take that time, to talk and just share things. And then even after he retired from the fire department here, I had opportunities to get together with him for coffee. And some of the things that I learned from that guy, because he'd been in the fire service for over 40 years over
Oh,
40 years, and as in this line of work of emergency services, there's things that you learn that you're not going to pick up in your initial academy and you're not going to pick up on a book. You're only going to pick it up, in the school of hard knocks out there on the street. And so for those of you who are listening and you're in positions like that, you're in supervisory positions or yeah, even if you're not, you're a firefighter for 20 years or an officer for 20 years, you've got things that you can pass on to other people. And don't hog that stuff. Share that with your co-workers. Or for those of you who are coming on the job, your new police officers, your new deputy sheriffs, new medics, new firefighters, ask those questions like Damien is saying. Some people come across, they look mighty fearful, like some firefighters, they got the massive mustaches and things like that. And then, don't let that scare you away because most of those guys are like are big teddy bears. But
yeah.
ask, but ask.
Yeah. And I
So,
want to add to that, Rick, the second part of asking questions. When you ask questions, it always keeps you teachable.
yeah, that's a
So
good point.
there's two things to asking questions that I learn is when I ask questions, that means my mind is open to continue to learn.
Mm.
So always be teachable too, meaning that you're always approachable. So that's the other side of that coin. Asking questions keeps you teachable.
Yeah, I like that. That's a very good point. So I had mentioned this back towards the beginning of the interview because of the career change. You went from law enforcement now to the civilian world and you got a business. What was that transition like? Well, first of all, what led you to that transition and what was that transition like, Damien?
Oh, great question. Yeah, for me, it was a vision that I got, right? Again, we kind of talk about biblical principles, and it says we perish without a vision, right? Or a lack of a vision. So I had gotten this vision, not knowing kind of what to do with it. And then after I went to go seek some good counsel, talk to some other great men that were seasoned and had some great wisdom, it was on the backside of that vision was what I was going to be doing now, which was leading, coaching, and training the next leaders in the next generation. So for me, it was scary, Rick. Again,
Mhm.
my identity was in that uniform, putting a uniform on every day. And, what am I going to do when that's over? Am I still going to feel like I could contribute to the community? Can I contribute to my family? And, am I going to be needed and wanted, right? We all want to be needed and
Ah,
wanted. So
yeah.
that was for me the scary part is like, what am I going to do now? And I would make this phrase like, I'm not equipped to do anything else. I've been doing this for decades. And I always had to kind of take a step back, have that patient pause and say, wait a minute, your first responder, your law enforcement experience was just your apprenticeship to what you've been called to do now, and
Mm,
that is to lead. And I think that's for everybody that transitions into not just first responder, but transitions out of retirement because you never retire from what you've been called to do.
right.
And I believe we're all called to be leaders in our family, our homes, in our communities, in our church. So you don't retire from that. So for me, it was a little scary that transition. That's what it looked like. It was a vision that I kind of saw myself on stage talking to people and coaching them through their journey and through their life experience and some of the trials and obstacles that I had in my life. So that's what it was for me. But it was scary. It was scary making that transition because the fear of, am I going to be needed and wanted?
Yeah, I can definitely sympathize with that because I've been there, myself. And for, those of us who are serving in police and law enforcement or EMS, there's a draw there for public service. And what you're bringing up there is like, hey, am I going to be needed anymore? That's a big deal. And for us as Christians, as believers, God's got a mission for us. He's got some place for us to serve. So what's one of your bigger challenges now being a business owner?
Oh, great question. Listening to my wife more. She's got a great insight on I don't think we should do business that way. I don't think, again, it's sometimes I feel like I'm drinking from the fire hydrant, right, Rick? It's like all this information and data, trying to run a business to, again, to just add value to people. Yeah, the finances side of it is great, but again, I just want to add the right kind of value to people. So my wife is my great buffer, and it's me being able to listen to her when she's giving good wisdom and good advice on how to be a business owner. So for me, I'm so super thankful for her that she's agreed to take on this partnership with me and kind of be the behind the scenes and really give me that wisdom and guidance on and just how to do business the right way.
Wow, that's great. Our wives.
Yes.
Yeah. So as we wrap this up, Damien, can you offer a few actionable leadership tips that our listeners can implement right away to enhance their leadership skills and abilities?
Yeah, we'll go back to the previous question is ask questions and be teachable. I think
Mm.
if you could do those two things, then you're heading in the right direction to be able to grow yourself so that way you could lead well is ask questions, but also be teachable.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else you'd like to add as we're wrapping this up?
No, again, thank you for the time today, Rick. It's
You're
great to
welcome.
talk about leadership. It's great when you have a lot of things in common with another
Hmm.
individual. Again, especially someone that's seasoned and has been doing it for such a long time. So I just want to encourage the listeners again, pick up a book and start reading. You'll learn something, you'll relearn something, and you'll unlearn something. And that's just the way to grow yourself.
So, Damien, if any of our listeners want to reach out to you, if anybody who is in law enforcement that's listening to this and said, hey, I'm thinking about leaving law enforcement, I'm reaching the end, how can they contact you?
Yeah, they could send me an email at Damien@threestrong.com, or they could just simply go on my website at threestrong.com and they could send me a message and I'll get it and we'll reach out. And if you're here in the Colorado area, especially the Springs area, love to get a cup of coffee, or if you don't drink coffee, I do drink tea as well. Yeah, send me a message and I'd love to get to meet you and chat and see how we could connect and further grow each other as individuals and as leaders.
Okay. And you're also on LinkedIn.
And I'm also on LinkedIn. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, Damien, thank you very much for your willingness to come on today. I know that just from this conversation here, we could be on another hour or or two, but we gotta draw it to an end someplace there. So, folks, this has been Damian Marquez, and we've been talking about leadership. If you found this episode to be useful, please like, subscribe, share it. And as I said at the beginning of the episode, you do not have to be a firefighter to listen to Firehouse Talks with Jersey Rick. We're just sitting around here talking, just like we were at the kitchen table
Yeah.
talking. You can visit my website at fireofficerleadershipacademy.com, and my email will be in the show notes. So until next time, thank you for listening. And Damien, thank you again for showing up on our show today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you, Rick. Have a blessed day.
You